agenda for today is basically to do a quick review of what we're doing, why we're doing it. And just so you know, the programs that we're putting in here are wildly successful. Wildly successful. I was telling Terry, one of my other clients yesterday in Santa Clarita Valley, and I've been up there just, I do maintenance programs. I started with them at the end of 2010, another home improvement company. And we walked in yesterday to their brand new building, 2 stories, beautiful building in Santa Clarita. And he looks at me and he goes, you know, he says, this building is because of you. And honestly, it was just an incredibly gratifying moment, because all I did in that time that I had with them is put in discipline in the sales process. Because I believe that. I believe that that's how salespeople succeed. Discipline. And understanding that it is a step-by-step process. And in that process, what you're doing is enlightening people. And that word enlightenment just means to bring to a new level of understanding, right? And the key in this whole process we're putting in is it's not enough for you to talk your way into a sale. That's total bullshit. Those people, good luck. That's not how it works. What works is kind of a 3-pronged viewpoint. Number 1, yes, I have to be in communication. I have to build affinity, and I have to build an agreement level, right? That's vital. We know that because people buy from people. Number 2, people, ironically, will believe what's written before they'll believe what's said. If it's not written, it's not true. Otherwise, why do people believe the crap that they see in the line at the supermarket? I mean, they'll believe it. National Enquirer is still in business. And it's still incredibly profitable because people believe it. And that understanding and it took me 25 years in the field to get that. For 25 years, I did really well, but it was sheer grit and intention and feeding the children, you know, all of those things that make you go out and do it. And then all of a sudden, the epiphany of, oh my Lord, I'm now getting it. It has to be written. And then number 3 is the understanding that if I don't make the case for my product and destroy the competition, not, you know, a little bit, you know, literally destroy the competition, whose intention, by the way, is to destroy you and to prevent you from making a living and to sway that homeowner, unfortunately, with anything said, you know, to make them go with them. I prefer the word persuade rather than convince, but that's so true. So that's the 3-pronged approach that we're taking here in this program. And again, we get back to the fundamentals, so we're just going to do a quick review, and those fundamentals are that on the front end, we have resistance and acceptance. And that resistance is what we face as salespeople when we ring that doorbell. And behind the smile, and behind the handshake, and behind the manners and everything else is fear, right? What's the fear of? Loss. That fear is, believe it or not, they're not going to like you. So if we were just to make a list of those things that they are in fear of, and we're going to put fear up here, and this is fear of loss. Acceptance is all about desire for gain. Of the 2, this is the more motivating factor, especially when you're selling a $300,000 design build project. Fear of loss is really a big thing. I mean, I just ordered a product from Amazon yesterday, and it's going to come tomorrow. It was $140. Big deal. There's not a worry about fear of loss. If it doesn't work, I send it back, you know. But when it comes to the kind of projects you're talking about, that definitely is a big factor. And again, as I look at all of this, right, we can put another word at the top. We can call this reactive. And we can call this analytical. You get it? Because the fascinating thing about this is it's conscious and unconscious. Unconscious, we do it. We don't even know why we do it. My daughter telling me about her new apartment. She goes, you know, Daddy, we really like it, but there's something about that room. I don't know what it is. My little 2-year-old, she doesn't stay in the room very long. Nicole, my daughter, doesn't stay in the room very long. Well, why is that? She doesn't understand it, right? It's not that she can look at it and it just all of a sudden disappears or dissipates. There's something going on there that she can't get. And that's kind of an unconscious, a reactive way that people spend their time, right? That we all do. Fears, worries, why is that? You know, why is it that the kid, when the light's turned off, just goes into fear? Conscious and unconscious. And ironically, when we make the close, when we finally get to the end and we get them over the edge, we're also handling whatever that unconscious concern was. That's what the close is. They've just overcome it. We have to tip them over the edge. That's why in great salesmanship, part of that is control, right? We have to control it. We have to get it all the way to where we need it to be. And then we kind of put them over the edge, right? So reactive, analytical, and all those things that we're dealing with is, number one is the salesperson. Why? Because the earlier track on salespeople is not good. Salespeople don't have a great reputation. Look in the dictionary at the definition of selling, and you would be shocked at the first definition of selling. Betray is the first definition of selling. Wild, isn't it? That there are no more salespeople. They're all energy specialists, design specialists. We don't even call ourselves salespeople anymore, right? So that is number one in their mind. On top of all of that comes the prior experiences, construction prior experiences, and the money, you know, the product that we're using, good, bad, soft, hard, wrong product, all of those things we can line them up. And when that doorbell rings, that's what we are facing. And on top of all of it, isn't this fascinating? They're not in, these homeowners now, generally in present time. Now, let me explain what that means. Because they're overwhelmed with conscious, unconscious, worries, concerns, all of those things, generally you'll find they're not in present time, right? And what do I mean by present time? I mean right now, in the moment. They're not in the moment. They go into the moment when you give them the price, don't they? That's one point in time, you know they are right there in the moment, is when you present that price. It's like everything just dissipates, boom, gone, woof, and they'll look at the price. And that's a lot of time what we're facing when we meet people. And that's why I'm such a big believer in the control aspect, because when we control the process, we are to a certain degree ensuring they are in present time. And I'm not letting them feed in to the worries and concerns and issues. Do you get it? That's the control that a great salesperson has when they enter that domain. So, that being said, we have one other aspect here. We're talking about the homeowner. The problem is the salesperson also comes to this with their own fears and worries and concerns. The money, you know. They're worried because, oh my goodness, think about this now. The back end, the delivery part of their business, let's not even take Pacific Outdoor Living as an example. Let's take any product. If his delivery was poor, right, ethically, could he really make the case for his business? No. He'd restrain himself, wouldn't he? He'd pull back. He wouldn't be as gung-ho or as enthusiastic about it. And that's one thing I told Terry. I mean, I've been very lucky because during the interview process, when I go into companies and I talk to them about how to put these processes in, I want to know if your delivery is where it needs to be. Are you delivering what you say you're delivering or more? Because I can't fix that. Not in the realm that I'm consulting in, sales and marketing. Very difficult for me to go in and get the delivery aspect in, because if it's not, there's very little I can do with salespeople, because ethically, they'll restrain themselves. They won't be as committed, as willing to push forward and persuade that individual. You get it? So where are we going with this? Well, let's backtrack a little bit. If the fear of loss is the large factor, if the fear of loss is there, our job is to do two things: overcome it and feed into it. And feed into it. Take advantage of it. And where is the fear of loss? In this industry, it's a fascinating industry because homeowners are educated in the 3-bid process. They're educated, and who can blame them, right? Even the state tells them, you need to get 3 bids. State of California, if you hear the ads that I hear on the radio, talks about 3 bids, get 3 bids. Go to the state contractor's licensing board and website, and it'll talk about 3 bids. You have to get 3 bids. You have to educate yourself. And in our case, we're all for it, are we not? Of course we are. Absolutely for it. We want you to protect yourself. We want you to be aware of what's going on out there. So, we're going to get into this today. I'm getting into that feeding into the fear of loss. So how do we overcome this at the beginning? Well, what's interesting is that, and I believe this, I believe that people do make decisions and evaluations, correct or not, in that first few minutes, the first few minutes of meeting you. And this has been backed up. I have the statistics to prove it. Harvard will back me up on it. The decision-making process is made in the early stages. The early stages. What we seem to forget is generally the people we're dealing with are very intelligent. You know, we might walk away as salespeople and say, nah, another one of them, or classify it, categorize them. But generally, the people we talk to are pretty successful, correct? There's not a lot of people out there who are going to spend $30,000 on a driveway that haven't made it somehow. They're smart at investing, right? They have good careers. Design build, $300,000 project, who's kidding you? Those people, rightly or wrongly, are in the top tier, or as their government likes to say, the 1%, the successful. That's who we cater to. We're not catering to the people with a low IQ level. Those people are smart. They're intelligent. They can evaluate. Their own experience, rightly or wrongly, has led them to conclusions. And I know that regardless of what it is that I'm selling, you know, if it's a consulting package or whatever, those first few minutes are crucial. That's the handshake, hi, nice to meet you. It's the look in the eye. It's the way I dress. The way I dress, I'm a big believer in it. How I look to them, what they perceive when they first meet me. Because that initial resistance, I want to overcome. And I didn't create the white shirt. I didn't. It was actually introduced to me by a successful company in Texas that did it. And I thought, oh, he's absolutely right. He doesn't even know what he's doing. His viewpoint was, and it was at a big meeting that I was at, he actually stood up, this is 10 years ago, and said, I want to tell everybody a little secret of the trade that nobody knows. Our numbers were here, we all put white shirts on, our numbers went up there. And I thought, wow. And he taught them how to tuck their shirts in, and he taught them how to shave, and he taught them how to wash and do all those good things. Mike Diamond does it, the smell good plumber. That's all we're doing is feeding into that conscious and unconscious, right? So the white shirts have proven themselves to be a winner. They get over that hump in the early stage. The getting in communication at the beginning, the structure that we talk about. All of it geared towards resistance, fear of loss. All of it geared towards, for example, understanding manners. The homeowner looks at you and says, can I get you something to drink? My goodness, thank you so much for asking. I'd love a glass of water. What does that do? It engages them in conversation, right, at the early stages. Because the failure in selling isn't because people don't have intent. Most salespeople I meet across the board have great intention. You know, the failure in selling is that most salespeople emphasize and work on and spend 90% of their time on the acceptance end. features, benefits, what's great about our company, why you should buy our product. And that's not where you're at in the early stages. In the early stages particularly, you are completely geared towards resistance. Your job at the very beginning is to do what? Draw it out of them. That's the great thing about salespeople. They get other people to talk. So that little acceptance at the beginning of the water is an opportunity to do what? Get somebody to start talking. You know? Could I get you something to drink? Oh my goodness, thank you so much. A glass of water would be great. They give you a glass of water, and what do you do next? Chat. Start to talk. Take your time. Pacing is very important in selling, you know. It's part of the discipline process. Pacing. You know? Get them to talk. Oh my goodness, beautiful home. Is this? It looks like a new housing area. You know, how long have you been in here? Oh, they just built it a year ago. We just finished. Yeah, great. Where'd you move from? Talking, just interested in the other person. All the time trying to draw out communication. And that first introductory stage is where they overcome that first obstacle, the fear of the salesperson. It's now you talking and being in communication. And if I can get over that initial hump, if I can relax somebody, get them to start talking, that is key. I was asked one time, what's the biggest problem that you find with salespeople? Because I meet so many salespeople in my career. And I'll tell you, to be honest with you, part of the problem with salespeople is they're not conversationalists. They can't get a conversation going. You know, and yet it's so easy if you just ask questions. People love to answer questions. I'm not talking about giving them the third degree. I'm just talking about asking questions where you're interested in them, and it opens them up, right? And what we're talking about here now is we're talking about these stages that we've introduced. And that first stage is just that intro stage. Getting them to communicate, getting them to talk. Once we get through that and you've taken your time, you're not rushing, and if she's a talker, great, she's a talker. So much the better. I don't mind that, but I know when it gets to go beyond the comfort level. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, good. Well, that's wonderful. Well, I'm sure your time is probably limited today. So what I thought we might do is, moving into stage 2, would you like to give me a kind of a look at what you have in mind? The control comes in, right? So we move into stage 2. And that stage 2 is really just an investigation stage. It's a stage where we begin to look and we begin to see what they have in mind. Let them talk. Give me your dream. Give me your idea. Give me where you want to go with this. You know, and they will bring them out. Start to look at whether it's the driveway or start to look at, and then you're going to be able to ask more questions at that point because as I go through this process, what am I doing? I'm trying to find those areas of resistance. You know, so how did you find out about us, by the way? You know, I was at the showcase. Oh, wonderful. That says a lot, right? I think the statistics in the showcase and people who go to the showcase, very high demographically. You know, from an income level, from an education level, all those. That's our perfect customer that they would go there. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. Do you go to every showcase? Again, chatting. Just out of curiosity between the two of us, I know you saw the showcase. What was your favorite? What was your least favorite? A deliberate question that's designed to get them to give me some idea of what they like and don't like, right? All those questions are geared along that. But that introduction stage is vital to asking the right questions. But I'm not selling the project. Don't fall into the trap. We're not selling the project. They might say something along the lines of testing your expertise, setbacks, you know. Is it possible that hesitation, what happens when you hesitate? What happens when you don't have product knowledge? Exactly right. You jack up the resistance. They'll look at you, they'll get the answer, and what do you think their mind's doing? Calculating. Uh-oh. It's that little red flag that keeps going up. That's just inevitable. That's how people operate. They're looking for competence and certainty. You know, those are the two major things that people buy. They buy competence and they buy certainty. They're looking for it because it lowers resistance, it increases acceptance for them. They want to make sure that you are that guy or gal. Remember, you are the company. That's the irony of what I do when I go in and work with salespeople. You become the company. They don't know Terry. They don't know this organization. They don't know any of the admin staff here. The story of Pacific Outdoor Living, it's you. From the guys that are in the field, delivering and installing, but particularly to you. So now that we've gotten to that stage, and number 3, we're essentially going to qualify. And it's a very simple question, and it gets us to an understanding of where they're at. How real is this to them? And it's the simplest thing you've ever heard in your life. You know, wow, this is going to be beautiful when you're done. Oh yeah, I really hope so, blah, blah, blah. Well, how long, just out of curiosity, have you been thinking about doing this? And then they talk to you about time and effort and everything else, and they say, well, you know, we had the thought of it years ago when I went to the first showcase, and as the years have passed, we've had good days and bad days, and good years and bad years, and now we really feel, you know, that we're at that point. But it's been about 5-6 years, really that long. You emphasize the length of time, really that long. So what made you decide to move forward today? And that question right there puts people back into what? Present time. Isn't it fascinating? They go back into present time, right at that point. And at that point, they'll tell you the answer. They'll go, well, it's just one of those things, you know. I had my 50th birthday just recently. I realized my grandkids keep coming here and don't have a pool to play in. It's like I looked at my husband and I said, it's time. They're talking to me. They're talking to me. And I'm acknowledging them, and she goes, that's the plan. Or they go, oh no, I'm not planning to move forward right now. First thing out of your mouth? Okay, I got it. She goes, yeah, we're going to get 3 bids. We're really going to investigate this whole process. We really want to make sure we're going to make the right decision. Next thing you say, good for you. That's all you have to say, good for you. If I were in your shoes, I would do exactly the same thing. Am I going to get a sale? Oh man, I'm going to get a sale. Either way, I'm going to get a sale. You know, you can always tell the tire kickers, we know that, and I'm not trying to, you know, make the case for 100% closing ratios. I actually don't believe in that. I don't know anybody that has 100%. I do know one guy that had 100% closing ratio in what he did. But he was very good at qualifying. He didn't fool around. He qualified them very well and had great people in front of him, and he was exceptional at that. But that one question takes them in a direction we want them to go in. One way or the other, they're going to tell us where they're at. What made you decide to do, how long have you been thinking about doing this? Oh, 5-6 years? Okay, really that long, huh? Yes, great. Well, what made you decide to move forward today? Do you notice how I just said it? It's the way you say it that's important. What made you decide to move forward today? Lower your voice. Or if you're not comfortable with today, then just say now. What made you decide to move forward now? Well, it's time now. You know, my sister-in-law just did it, and then my guy across the street just did it. Whatever that might be, because again, we're looking for emotional connections, right? So why? Why are they doing it? Or, I'm not planning to move forward today. I'm getting 3 bids. In fact, Michael's getting a dividend payout. It's not going to be for 3 more months. So I'd say, honestly, we're just looking to get something going. Right? I totally got it. Do I also believe that I can create enough desire and want for them to get them to move forward faster? Of course I do. But you wouldn't be good at sales if you didn't have that viewpoint. We're generally, most of us, our glass is always half full people as opposed to half empty, right? So now that we've gone through this process, we want to now move into what we call priorities.
I have a question.
Yes, please. Any questions, raise your hand.
Okay, so like on that step 3 on qualified, went over the idea of like, okay, what made you decide to do it today? Okay, and get the response and have. Is there anything else in that qualification?
No.
Step?
No, it's too early. No,
Okay.
way too early. And I'm telling you from experience, if I bring up budget too early, all I do is feed into this. It's all I do.
So then what do you mean exactly by qualified? Just determining whether they're going to do it now versus later?
One word, just intent.
Okay.
Just intent, that's it. What made you decide to move forward today? They're right back in present time. And I want an answer. I want to engage them at that point. Because some people, I've watched it, they'll go, well, be honest with you, I'd love to move forward today if the price is right. Oh, okay, well, great. Well, I hope I'm in the ballpark. You know, honestly, it's a little too early in the process right now, Mrs. Jones, to get into budget, but I'm sure you have a figure in mind. But let's address that later on. Would that work for you? I do not want to address that number too early in the process. It doesn't work. Why? Because I understand they're buying me, and I believe that if I can withdraw just a little bit, get them to reach, there's a time. Believe me, there's more than once, especially for both of you, in the one call close, which is really important in paving stones. Too early. Too early. Just ask that question. All it does is it gives me intent. And at that, go ahead.
So then if you, so you're clarifying the guy's intent, so then would that mean that at that stage you would determine, because again, when I think of qualify, I think of, am I going to proceed with this person as a client and use my time or not? That's what I understand the term being, from my experience in talking about it. So would you then at that point, you would ascertain the customer's intent and you would make a decision, or you would, you know, go, okay, well this guy doesn't want to move forward because he says, oh, I want to visit 6 months, or...
You're asking a great question. So just as the customer can tell in those first 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whether or not they want to do business with us, we can usually pick up red flags, can we not? And here we are, we arrive at the property, and you know, it's in a shambles, it's not exactly what, you know, we make those decisions and those calculations every day, day in and day out. In that early question, for example, if I have doubts at all, how'd you find out about us? And they say, well, I saw you in Home Mag, which are those little direct mail publications, right, where everybody's fighting amongst each other for business and so forth. Okay, good. And, you know, how long have you been thinking about doing this? How long have you had this in mind? Well, I have this and that. It's been a few years. Okay, well, what made you decide to move forward today? And he goes, well, I'm not sure if I'm moving forward today. And you go, okay, well, I can understand that. I mean, not all of my clients decide to move forward on the first day, but if you don't mind me asking, why is that? Now, if I have doubts or reservations, I'm going to delve in a little bit farther before I go into the rest of the process. He's inviting me to ask more questions. So don't for an instant try to say that I want you to stop there. I just don't particularly feel that throwing a budget out that early and delving into money is going to make sense for you. I'd rather get into that a little later. But if there are red flags from him, absolutely, you can ask more questions.
Right, so for example, then on that point, okay, so you said, the guy says, well, I'm not really not ready to move forward today. I wasn't thinking that. And you say, well, okay, why not? Why haven't you moved forward today?
Well, if you don't mind me asking, why would that be? Remember, it's all in the question. So if
Right.
you don't mind me asking, why would that be?
Right. So then the guy would say, well, actually, because we're doing several different projects on our home, and we don't know what the overall budget's going to be, so we're collecting this from all the different contractors, and then we're going to get a second on the house, and then we're going to do all this work, and we're figuring probably by the end of the summer we'll be able to do it. So at that point, where the guy's saying, you know, I'm telling you probably months and months off, what would you do?
At that point in time, I'd still progress.
Okay.
It's totally fine with me. That does not make a difference for me, because, hold that thought though, Terry, because I still, at the pipeline, and in my pipeline, not a sales process now, a pipeline is very different, I can slot him into that future date of my pipeline. But I'm not done yet, you see, because I know that as I move through, I still got to get into priorities, and I still got to get into what we call the setup. So if we can look at those first 5 stages, all at addressing resistance, I'm going to be asking more questions based on what you just brought up. Because I'm going to ask you, for example, because you've invited me to ask you, because you've just given me an outline of where you plan to be, I would, at that later date, as we move into there, go, well, I'm assuming you've also talked to other people. Not have you talked to others, I'm assuming you've talked to other companies as you go through this process. And as we go through this now, Mr. Johnson, please be right up front with me. I mean, obviously at Pacific Paving Stones, we'd love your business, but I'm certainly not going to push anything on you. But are there things that are vitally important to you in this investigation stage that you're going through? We talked, Terry, you're going to ask a question, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we actually have maybe 2 definitions for qualifying, because we do have it that we qualify the guys in the phone room, and that definition means eliminate where they go, okay, I understand, tell me a little bit about the project, and the guy goes, I'm a tenant. Well, he's gone. We don't even, or he says, I want to do a driveway, I'm thinking of spending $1,000. You know, but I think this definition might be more to classify, right? The type of, and so we know a little bit more of who we are.
Right, because that's the thing that I get, just like what you were talking about, because with the term qualify, I get qualified or not qualified.
Right. And
That's what I
in
get.
the callroom earlier,
In or out.
it means, yeah, in or
Yes
out.
or no.
Yeah, but now we're
That's why
just
I got
getting
confused.
what their intent is, so we know what we're dealing with, right?
Yeah, we'll stick with intent for now.
Okay.
It's still a qualification question, but I'm not done in that early stage. I'm not pulling out a darn thing until I get through at least step 5.
Was that pre-qualified?
There's nothing I'm doing. We can call it pre-qualified. We can look to intent, but it basically it lays the playing field as to where your intentions are at this point in time, if that makes sense. Again, when I first met you, the last time, I'm a great believer in marketing and having an understanding of marketing. I'm sorry, I hate to put my back to you here all the time. But marketing and so forth I'm very aware of what is called the educational timeline. I'm very aware of it. And the educational timeline is what everybody goes through from A to Z on the decision-making process, educating themselves. You know, I can be technologically, I'm not that great, so it takes me a little longer to make decisions, technically. Like I bought a software product yesterday, I should have bought it 5 years ago, that's what's coming in the mail, $140, right? Should have done it years ago, but I didn't, and then finally something put me over the edge. But that educational timeline is the process that everybody goes through in educating themselves. From not having an idea here of doing anything to suddenly seeing the neighbor having it and having that little initial thoughts, right? And then now, well, look at the house. The house was sold. Oh my goodness, that house that had the paving stones on it sold in 3 days of going in the market. Even though the homeowner doesn't know or doesn't have all the facts on it, in their back of their mind they're thinking, well, we just put the paving stones in. Maybe that helped. So all of a sudden the interest level goes up in paving stones because in 2 years they want to sell the house. All of those things come into play, right? So as they go through this process, what do? They talk to neighbors. They go online, they do some investigation, and they're at a point in time when suddenly, here we go, comes Systems Pavers, comes Pacific Outdoor Living, comes the 3-bid process. And all the time, they're going to be looking for money, investments, and so forth, and they finally make the decision. So knowing where they're at on the educational timeline is very important. He might say to me, when I first meet him, in this process, they go, well, I'm going to be very honest with you. You know, I just bought the house. You know, we just closed on the house a month ago. We're looking at a variety of different projects, and this is one of them. And I don't know whether it's going to be a month, 6 months from now, or what we're considering. Still moving forward, you know. Okay? So intent. Now, perfect time to bring up priorities. Again, addressing resistance. So, you know, that being said, you know, just out of curiosity, as you look at the project and you really see, and I get the picture that you have here, what is most important to you in this process? And what's least important to you? It's a good question. And now, again, I'm addressing more than just intent. I'm addressing basically what's important to them, what's not important to them. And on the larger projects, that's a big deal, right? So again, I know training has taught me that there's usually only 3 things. 3 things. It's the money, it's product, and all the things that come with that product, whether it's warranties and so forth, and it's me. And the company is also involved in there, but I break it down into 3 things. If they don't get me, if they don't trust me, I'm not going to get the business. And so at the back of my mind, selling anything, even consulting, which I do, it always boils down to those 3 things. It's money, very much me, right? Because they have to trust that I can come in and do it and get along with their people and all of those things. And then the methodology, in my case. Always those things, and that's what I stay focused on during my questions and my qualifying process. So in this priority stage, just out of curiosity, and see, notice how I asked the question. I'm a big believer in how you invite the answer. You know, just out of curiosity, as you look at the project, as you look at everything, you know, what do you put at the very top as a priority, and what would you put at the very bottom? And they go, and they like that, you see? So instead of, you know, at this point I really like to get into priorities. What's really important to you? Do you see the tone is a little bit more barbed?
Yeah, I like that.
A little bit more sharp, right? And that's, as we walk through the process, you'll notice the acknowledgments. I mean, even if I do a workshop, you'll hear me say this all the time. That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. Boy, I wish there were more people like you in a workshop like this. Why? I want to invite you to say more. Workshops don't work when it's just me standing for 2 hours, just talk, talk, talk. I have to invite the audience to communicate, and it's the same with the customer. Just out of curiosity, as we go through this process, you know, I've learned over the years that ultimately where we get, and here's how I throw in a plus, where we've been able to get a Angie's List Super Service Award more than 1 year in a row, it's because at the end of the day, the only one that's important here is you. What you want to achieve out of this project. And if you don't mind me asking you at this stage, I know it's early in the game, but what's important to you and what's not? You get it? I'm still addressing fear of loss. I want to hear the fear of loss because that's important, least important. Hopefully she brings up some of those things. She might say, well, you know, I want to get it at the right price. Good. Anything else? Well, I want to make sure it lasts, so I want to make sure I get the guarantee on it. Good, that's great. And I had this vision, I really want it to look like this. And in fact, I even have a photograph of it. I'd like to show it to you. And they bring it up. Good, what's the least important to you? Well, you know what, I don't need to have the fancy mailbox. You know, where there's a home down the road and they put the paving stones in and then they built the mailbox. I think it looks ridiculous, you know? And you go, okay, that's great. But just out of curiosity now, other than that, because those are real positives, is there anything you want to avoid in this process? Is there anything that you could think of as the last thing you want to do? You see? And that question is directed to fear of loss. And she goes, well, you know, the last project we have, I swear to God. And then she tells you this whole story, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I've hit the mother load. It's as if I'm opening up a door, and now comes all this shit. And it just pours out, and I'm going, yes, that's what I want to hear, right? Because it's a fascinating thing about social tones, right? A social tone. When we talk about a tone, we talk about emotional levels, right? So you go to a party and you meet new people for the first time. Are you really seeing them for what they are? Probably not. You're seeing the tone they put on that has 3 glasses of wine behind it and a nice suit. That's kind of a different tone, right? It's not the guy you tend to meet on a Sunday morning when he's got his t-shirt on, he's walking his dog, and it's the real joke. So that social tone is what you're facing every single time you ring that doorbell. It's not really them. And that ability to open up that door, the dungeon door, right? You open it up, it's in the ground. Just like Ghostbusters. Remember Ghostbusters? When, you know, that can pour it out, it's always green and black and dark and yucky. Same thing here. We open it up because that question invited it. What would you like to avoid during this whole process? Or even better, you know, regardless of who it is that you decide to move forward with, what's a priority to you, just out of curiosity, which really is key for you, and secondly, what do you want to avoid? And then they tell you the prior experience, the prior guy, the real estate project from hell. Because you'll find generally that as we delve into real estate, for most couples, remember who you're dealing with. Don't forget your demographic profile. You're dealing with a very particular demographic. It's not maybe the first time they bought a house. You know, they're affluent enough. They understand. They've been around. You know, and in this case, they generally have more war stories than other people do because they've done it more than once, right? Get that out of them, because that's what we're going to really push that button as we move forward in the process. Good, so now that we've got the priorities out of the way, we're now moving into what we call the setup. And again, I'm addressing resistance.
You got
Yes.
another question?
Good, I want questions.
Everybody knows, I think I blab a lot in the meetings.
That's okay, go for
So one of the things that you mentioned too about the tone in which you asked the question. Now, obviously I've noticed that too, and it's very unassuming, it's very light a little bit, so it's very easy to answer and respond. So my question for you is that something that was just part of your natural personality, or did you actually at some point work on that as an issue and then drill that and go, okay, and then get to a point like, wow, this really works, and you just
Worked on it and drilled on it.
Yeah.
And because of my understanding was that as I move through life, and I've been in sales all my life, I realize it's how I ask the question that invites. In other words, I gave you that funny story about how I started my career in door to door. And in that little point at the front door where I said, and I showed them these, remember I told you about the box, going door to door, and I showed them these, and I thought you might like some also. And they go, well, what do you have? I knew exactly what they said, but I made them repeat it. Pardon me? What do you have? Oh, I'm so sorry. And that laughter would break them down. So I learned early that the key was inviting the communication, safe enough space. In essence, I never want to be here with my client. I want to be here with my client. And to me, that's what getting agreement really means. It's matching that emotional tone. Do you get it? It's matching it. And so if I can match the tone, I can invite them to communicate more. It's like the old thing about never try to close a deal standing over the client. You would never do that. Even in car dealerships, you notice they'll sit down. Even the manager walks in and sits down. They're never standing over the top of you. And that same concept is there. So match it. So and then sometimes I will actually lower it to give them the feeling that they're really in command of this whole process. I want them to feel that way. They don't know that I'm guiding it. Totally know exactly where I'm at. I'm in the present time. Your worst enemy is you. That's the God's honest truth, you know. Your worst enemy is you, because a lot of the time you're walking in, you have no step-by-step sales process. Maybe some of you have, and don't get me wrong. That's the great thing about this company, is it's already been successful. I'm just trying to give you little additives, tweaking it. But for most people, they have no step-by-step. There's no control. It's like a little boat going out in the water, and they put the sails up, and the wind blows in whatever way they go that day. Oh, sales are real easy for me. Whatever the customer wants, I just go in that direction. No, that's not going to get you very far. So me lowering it, that's why, you're asking a great question. Just out of curiosity, because I'm really intrigued by this. You see how I'm really intrigued by this. And a lot of times it's genuine. I am intrigued by it because I want them to start goddamn talking so I can get to the resistance, so I can get them to tell me the truth. They're not telling me the truth. She's not telling me in a one-legger, which we all have, what the husband told her that morning. Or what I told my wife last night about Mother's Day. I said, okay, good. The whole family's coming over. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. Okay, let's agree we're doing this. Let's agree the budget for Mother's Day is this. Okay, is that fair? We had that conversation. And most couples do. Right? So uncovering it and getting it out is based on, you're asking a great question. I love powerful acknowledgments. Where the customer goes, at the end of the day, here's what I believe. I believe that A, B, and C. And I look at them and I go, you know what? You and I are both exactly, on the same page. I believe that too. In fact, let me tell you a funny story. And then we move into a funny story. And what do they feel? We're in total agreement. But they are, because I've been able to master that agreement part, right? So now comes the setup. Now control comes right in. So first off, thank you so much for giving me that information.
Thank you for responding.
Yes, right? But you notice how I'd say that before I'd even intro into this. I'd say, well, first off, thank you for being so honest with me. Right? Thank you for telling me what your real intentions are. So here's what I thought we would do today, and I hope this works for you. Again, I'm allowing them to feel like I'm giving them control. And I do, I want that. I want them to be predetermined. I believe that when we get to the close, when we move into the closing stages, that understanding from them allows them to say and do things that they wouldn't do with someone they didn't trust. Make sense? So by saying that to them, and right at that point in time, so first off, thank you so much for being so honest with me. I really appreciate it. And I really get where you're planning to go with this. So that being said, this is what I thought we would do today, and I hope this works for you. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And in those 4 steps, I'm telling them there's going to be an educational stage where I'm going to be able to educate you, and Terry's going to come up here and we're going to show you what we mean by that. And during this whole process, I also want to be able to measure. I'd also hope that you, in that measuring process, which takes about 20 minutes, that you take the time to read the information that I'm going to give you. And when you see the information we've created, you'll see why they're intrigued to read it, because most people won't read it, you know. Here's another fascinating thing you have to understand. If I walked into a homeowner tomorrow and I handed them a copy of Architectural Digest, and I handed them a copy of the National Enquirer Digest, which one do you think they'd read 9 out of 10 times? The National Enquirer. And I'm just saying, if they had been designed along the same model, right? Of course. Because the attraction to gossip and to the dirt in life is just compelling to people, right? It's just fascinating. I mean, if you saw my daughters, I have daughters, so at nighttime, you know, they'll come over and we'll break out a glass of wine, we'll sit there, and they're all working, right? You would not believe what happened today. And you know what she said to me? And you just see them talk, right? It's just the funniest thing because they can't help themselves, nor can the public. So we're going to introduce material that is going to intrigue them and is going to feed in to that side of nature, right? Back to this. And I have some information that I'd really like you to take a look at. I hope you agree with me when I say this, but at the end of the day, you don't want to make the wrong choice, do you? What's most people going to say? Absolutely not. So part of what I hope to achieve today is to educate you, regardless of whether you decide to move forward with me or not. Do you see the difference? That's the withdrawal. That's where the trust level goes through the roof. And a lot of times, you know, in salesmanship, what's fascinating is all that salesperson had to do to go from good to great was to know how to say the right words and invite the communication. Because it's trust. Ultimately, the trust overcomes this, pushes it down, and we've got the desire for gain to move forward with this company is much higher. Because that's what closing the deal. You know, the definition of a close is when the customer believes that the cost, the investment, is greater than the risk. You get that? Let me explain that again. The definition of a close is where the customer believes that the investment that they're going to make is a better choice than the risk involved in moving forward. That's really fundamentally what it is. You get that? So that setup basically lays out the pattern. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. And at the end of the day, here's what I'd like to achieve from this, and I hope you'll agree with me. That I educate you, show you exactly what choices you have to make today, and hopefully present something to you. I mean, I'm making this up as I go along, but you can change the wording in that whatever way you want. And all I'm doing here now is hoping that they go, well, there's one other thing I wanted to address. Or, while we're at it, I'd like to get into this. Or, great. Am I missing anything? No. Okay, good. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to proceed to the next step. You get it? That early section now has taken me, what, 20 minutes? Maybe 20, 25 minutes. Pacing. Take my time. I've won it or lost it there. Granted, if I come back, apples for apples, at 27,000 with a competitor that's at 15,000, apples for apples, I swear to God, the only thing I have going for me is me. That's not easy to do that. But I'm not trying to say that that is not an obstacle that we have to overcome. It is. but that's part and parcel of why we're going to destroy the competition. Got it? Every single time. My intent now is to destroy the competition. So now that I'm there, I'm really moving into the next step, right, that we'll get into in a little minute. And what I want to do now is kind of digress a little bit and give you more of a conceptual understanding of where we're going in these next stages. Because in these next stages, we are going to spend more time working on the fear of loss, and at the same time, understanding that at the root of people's issues are these barriers to education, barriers to understanding. One of them is the word, the terminology that we use, that we're very good at clarifying. For example, in those early stages, I'm going to be right up front with people. I'm going to say, look, as we move through here, it's inevitable you're going to check out. And you notice when I say that, I go, it's inevitable you're going to check out. I want you in present time. So it's inevitable you're going to check out. And if you know what I mean by checking out, have you ever been talking to somebody and you're thinking about something else? I have. I know you have, and they laugh. Have you ever read something and suddenly you get to the end of the page and you realize that, oh my God, I've been reading robotically, but I haven't really heard anything. That's happened to you, hasn't it? Head nods, and they go, yes. Go, great. So promise me this. When you feel yourself checking out, just raise your hand and say, Peter, I just checked out there. Can you go over that again? Is that fair? Right? And you have established the game. This is all this does here is establish the rules of the game and why you're different. I want them coming back in this whole process and going, no, as we look at the 3 bids, it's just, I can tell you this over and over and over again. I make those calls in companies that I go into, the customer service callbacks, and you know that nearly 50, 60, 70% of the time they didn't move forward. Why? Why do you think it was they didn't move forward? Because they didn't trust the salesperson. Isn't that fascinating? They didn't trust the salesperson. The last company, one of the last companies I was with, her name was Erna. She was Costa Rican. Beautiful, big girl. You know, gorgeous. But my God, did you know she was in a room? And she'd walk into a room right now, and everybody's heads would turn, and she's Costa Rican. She got the look, the whole thing. She's a designer. You know, and you go to Erna later on. You go, Erna, that they sounded so great on the phone. How come they didn't move forward? Oh, they just didn't get it. They just didn't get design. You know, like she was Picasso. And I constantly had to work on. Hold on a minute. Their reality, your reality, it kind of has to blend. It can't overwhelm them. But that was the truth. So you constantly find out they didn't trust the salesperson. They didn't like the salesperson. Something about the salesperson. And in getting to this stage right now, you have laid the groundwork. There should be a sense of trust in you, a sense that they feel that they can communicate, that they can open up, that they can talk. And if you're at that stage there, oh my Lord, there is no reason why you shouldn't be feeling really good as you move through the process. Who cares? They're going to be at 12,000. I'm always going to be at 15,000. I have to make the case for why it's worth the extra $3,000 by making them fearful of taking the wrong choice. So here's what we're introducing at this point. And this is actually gone through the design process right now. And this design process is really created to focus on this fear of loss, right? And at the same time destroy the competition. And if it's used correctly, oh my Lord, it's the most powerful thing you could possibly imagine, right? So as I go through this process now, and maybe, for example, I've now gone, correct me if I'm wrong, so if you've moved through this process in the paving stone area, what would you be doing next? If we've just explained the process, would you go measure now? You would, or no?
No.
You would. What would you be doing next?
I'd be, well,
Where do you measure? Do I move at this point into an
I
educational
measure
process?
after I've actually worked out at least the general direction of what they want,
Okay, good.
what they
So
like.
you've got that process still to move into.
I'm actually addressing getting what they really want.
Good,
The
okay.
need and want thing.
Totally fine, because what's crucial about this is timing. Now let me just explain and show you those few things that we've created to this point. This is what is called marketing collateral. The word collateral means tools, right? Again, Designers Illustrated, Designers Inquirer. Which one will they read? I guarantee you. You could leave the prettiest information on the table, you can make it gorgeous, you can give them the DVD, you can do all of that stuff. The inclination is no. But if you tell them there's a little bit of dirt in there, and if you open it up, you're going to see that actor with his shirt off. Ooh, let me take a look. I mean, I'm just giving you an idea of the intent that goes behind this, right? So as we move through this, here's what we're going to do. We're going to introduce the critical mistakes that someone can make in this process. And we've focused, for example, and we're going to talk now about, and these are not completed yet, we're still in process. We're going to talk about the mistakes to avoid when doing a landscape design build project. Number one, have you discussed budget with your landscape designer? That's number one, and it explains that. Number two, working with a company that hires uncertified contractors or vendors. I'm going to explain what it is, and then I'll tell you how we introduce it. Number three, signing a contract without an itemized estimate, right? Number four, is the company you're hiring really paying workman's compensation? Really paying it? Not just showing you a copy of the certification, but are they really paying it? Next, hiring a company that is not accredited. So in other words, accredited by these agencies, which we give validity to, the Better Business Bureau, Angie's List, all of those companies, right? And that's really what Angie's List is, you know. It's an accreditation system. Angie's List, she's very smart. She focused on the fear that people have and then came up with a solution to solve the fear by classifying you as trustworthy or not trustworthy. All right? Number six, will you end up being the general contractor? And number seven, hiring a landscape designer that has no building experience. So those are 7 critical mistakes. Now on the back of this page, and it's not done yet, there will actually show that we will be showing them photographs. You know, one of the photographs we wanted to show, and we might still yet get it, is a truck from a contractor that crashed into somebody's home, and that contractor didn't have one.
No, he didn't have
Nothing.
auto liability.
Nothing. You know, I mean, that is a real possibility when you go and decide, because there's choices to make. When you make the choice to reduce the amount of money that you spend. Look, I bought a Microsoft product over Amazon yesterday. It cost me $130 plus tax. I was a little shocked on the tax. I guess the new thing has moved in right now. But anyway, $140. I could have gone in another direction and spent maybe $80. Did I want to do that? No, that's a choice that I make, only because business has taught me that with reduction in price comes what? Quality. Something has to give. You cannot be in business. You can't. It doesn't work. You can't be in business, as we were laughing this morning, as discount pavers. And have even that name on the front, because it's so easy for me to sell against it. 99-cent pavers. Well, you can go with Pacific Outdoor Living, but you know they're going to come in at $12,000. Go with me, you're going to pay $8,000. That's why we call me 99-cent pavers. And so that guy makes that approach, right? But in order to have 99-cent pavers, he's got to have 99-cent employees, 99-cent systems, a 99-cent service department. And as a salesperson, I know how to feed into that. So part of where we're going here is building the case for our product being more expensive. And at the root of that is, we're not hiring 99-cent people. You're quality people, quality installers, quality organization that takes a profit margin to keep it going. So that in 10 years from now, there's a service department that will service their product, right? So that's one. And for the paving stones, we have 6 critical mistakes to avoid, right? With 7 over here, we could have put down 20, but I've learned to keep it short, keep it sweet, right? Critical mistakes now, we're talking about critical. That is the wrong color. That's going to be red. And this is all geared around what? Making sure that we feed into the fear of loss and let them know if you decide to go with 99-cent pavers, you will pay the price eventually, right? The next one that we're giving them, we are giving them, as you move forward with this, a comparative analysis. And a comparative analysis is a visual aid that on one side, you can see this is not designed correctly yet, because where you see NA, which means not applicable, those will all be in red, right? So, for example, it says here, they're specific outdoor living. The question is, do they have a full-time design support staff? With a landscape design firm, we're going to tell the truth. Yes. Yeah, we're not here to embellish anything. We're just here to tell you the facts, right? So it's going to say yes. With an individual designer, no. With a general contractor, not applicable, and sometimes it may or sometimes it may not. Over here with a landscape contractor, the same NA, but with us, yes. And all of ours are yes. Right? Even the pricing that they pay for the design fee. For the landscape design firm, it's going to say $3,000 to $10,000. For the individual designer, $3,000 to $6,000. General contractors, not applicable. And with a landscape contractor, not applicable. Us, $1,500 to $3,000. And as we move down the list, we'll also say things like it's possible, often, sometimes. There's not any ifs or buts with us, right? And this is a visual aid that, now I know that this works. Not only do I see it with the companies that I go in, but I read a research project that actually websites now are doing it. So you might be able to, for example, pull up a product that you want, and when that product pulls up, it rates it in terms of pricing with its competitors. That's called a comparative analysis. And what it does, it feeds into the educational timeline and gives you the information that you need to make a decision now. What we want to do is we want to educate them and move them from here to here to here to here to here to here to there now by doing what? Educating them, speeding up the educational timeline, and making that choice a simple one for them because we just destroyed the competition. Get it? It works brilliantly. So there you have the comparative analysis. On the back, it explains the choices you make today have unwanted consequences tomorrow. What are those? What am I feeding into? Your choice to go with a lower price. And the only reason, generally, they're going to go with a lower price at the end of the day is because the other company made the case that their product was just as good as Pacific Outdoor Living. And for all these years, you guys have been really nice. And I commend you for that. You've been super nice. And super nice doesn't work. It doesn't. The ultimate presentation has two sides to it. You accentuate the positive, and you push the negative. You get that? Most salespeople, your training, my early training up until 10 years ago, accentuate the positive, accentuate the positive. Oh, they're going to buy it because they really like it. And then you never hear back from them again. Right? We're not doing that anymore. It doesn't work to your benefit. At this point in time, if we're in about a 50% closing ratio, which is fantastic, we can easily get to 70 just by enhancing how we present. Yes?
My easiest close when I get a sale is when I get to see the competitor bid, and I can go through and educate the homeowner on all the inaccuracies of their bid. Anytime I get to do that, I always get the deal.
Excellent.
And it fits right in there.
And that's because you've been lucky enough, first off, to have a level of trust built that they'll even give it to you. Do you get that? Because it's always a red flag when they're not giving you the other guy's bid. You haven't developed a level of trust yet where they can feel comfortable about doing that. And that's why I believe that those early stages, part of your success also, though, not only that, it's the affinity and agreement that you're building as you move through it. They're looking at you as being competent and being certain. Do you get that? Don't push that down the chain of decision making. That is what they're doing. They feel confident with you, trust has gone up, boom, they'll show you the other bid. And you're right, if you can get that opportunity, that's fantastic. So there's a comparative analysis, right? And again, I'm going through them with you. Now we're going to talk about when to introduce these. On the back of it, these are facts. This, to a certain degree, feeds into fear of loss. On the back, desire for gain, right? Pluses, negatives, always pluses, negatives. You can't push negative, 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 negative. People will flag you. It's got to be a combination of both. So now we move into the next one. We move into a 30-point quality control checklist. And that 30-point quality control checklist is something, particularly in design build, that they are going to take the time to educate themselves on, right, on this educational timeline, and read. What we added that's different to this is we added the security shield authority symbol, which we are putting by 6 critical questions that if they are going, even if you decide not to use me in this whole process, please don't move past those, any one of those 6. See the withdrawal? If I can withdraw with those customers and I can tell them, even if you decide not to use them, please, please, whatever you do, don't avoid those 6. Is that fair? Oh yeah, I'm so glad. You know, they were there today and telling her sister, oh my goodness, that really educated me on this whole process. And well, how come you spent $187 million with them? Well, it was just worth the money, man. I didn't want to go the other because they really made me clear on those security questions. And that's what we've focused on here. What are those 6 questions? The first one, we have 30 now. They have scored this. This is an interactive product. We're not just giving this to you. We want you to use it. Take the time. Go through all 30 of those. Do a little bit of investigation. Look at their A ratings. Do they have a license? We're going to educate you on what to look for. Those 6 questions are, do they have a contractor's license? If so, can you see it? Is it correct? You know, go online, look at it. Number 3 talks about, does their company have general liability insurance? Today's standard is $2 million, not $1 million. Again, destroy the competition. Another one here, number 5, do they have workman's comp? Will they show you payroll records to prove it? And as I'm sitting there with them, I go, you know, you have that right. It's up to you whether you decide to do it or not, but don't let anybody tell you you don't have the right to look at the payroll records. If they're really honest and they really want your business and they're really ethical, wouldn't that be important to you? Darn right it'd be important to you. And then we move down here and it says, will they supply credit references from their vendors? Don't do business with anyone without this! Exclamation mark. Another one, does the company have at least an A rating with a Better Business Bureau? At least an A. And if they don't, at least go in and find out why. And you know, you can always forgive a mistake that was 5 years ago. That's no big deal. But if it's current, you need to be really on the lookout. And in this one, number 25 says, if permits are involved, did they suggest to you that you not pull the permit? That other company I was telling you about, the one where they bought the building, is a plumbing and air conditioning company. And what I did was, thankfully, I convinced them 3 years ago, guys, you got to pull permits. You got to pull permits. I mean, do you know how much it costs them? It costs them nearly $40,000 a month to pull those permits. They're not always getting it back from the homeowner, but their business exploded. Why? Not because they're pulling the permit, because they're doing what? They're telling the customer that the other guy's not pulling the permit. Do you get it? That's the sale is made right there. That's the fascinating thing when you start thinking in terms of how this is. It's destroy the competition. Put the seed of doubt in their mind. Why would you move forward with this and not pull a permit? Did he suggest you have? He said you didn't need to. He did. Let me just show you what the state says. Let me show you what the city says right here. Aren't you glad you didn't move forward with that guy? Are you thinking about moving forward? Yeah? Well, it would be okay with you that even if you decide not to use me, let me take a look at what he said. I mean, at least I could do is educate you. Sale made. 10 minutes later. Always remember that. Those are the standard actions that we know need to be done that our competition generally is not doing. Get it? So what do we have in the back? A competitive price guarantee. Not a price match. That's foolish. It's a competitive price guarantee. And what does it state? As long as these requirements are met, we will match an apples for apples price, right? Number 1, is it a written proposal? Can I see it? Number 2, do they have a physical office? Like we were talking this morning about one of your competitors working out of an apartment in Studio City, right? So, but let's look at it, because if I said to a customer, well, I would probably say, well, there's nothing wrong with being in an apartment. When I first started my own business, I was in an apartment. Here's the problem for you. The problem is that because they're working out of an apartment, it's not what may happen 3 months from now or 6 months from now. It's what's going to happen in a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now if he wasn't able to get out of that apartment and actually build the business, because you're not going to have somebody to follow up when there's an issue. And that's one of the most common issues that the state board runs into. We saw them, they came, they went, they're gone. Do you really want to take that risk? Get it? So in other words, what did I just do there? I accentuated a positive. It's okay. I started in an apartment too. And at the same time, tweaked the negative. Accentuate, tweak, accentuate, tweak. That's part of the mastery of what you do. Feed into the fear, but at the same time accentuate. Not everybody's bad. There is good competition out there, let's be honest. All power to them. But they're not an Angie's List Super Service Award winner. But I don't know how important that is to you. Do you see the difference? How I accentuate the positive, and at the same time, put the little screw in. And that takes a little bit of practice. You're not going to do this overnight. I just want you to take this to heart as you go through this. So as you go through this, now this is going to enter their mind, right? Design build particularly. Because what happens after the joy of meeting you is dissipated and they've just spent the $1,500? What do you think they're thinking about when they give you that check for $1,500? Pardon me? I've given you $1,500, and at the back of their mind, I hope they give me the plans I'm looking for. And number two, I hope he just hasn't taken off to Hawaii. And number four, and number five, and number six, and number seven. So what are we doing at that point? We're making sure that we ensure trust. We want it to be, it's not written, it's not true. The next thing, the company must have, this is for us to match. You know, they must offer a comparable material warranty and a comparable workmanship warranty, which we do, and not very many other companies do. And number four, they must have workman's comp insurance verifiable by payroll documents. Number five, they must have been in business at least 7 years. And when you talk to the customer about that, you outline, just say, why do we think we put that in there? Because that's the hump that companies have to get over. You see, what you're going to invest money in, Mrs. Johnson, if I can just be honest with you, this is, you know you're getting into 6 figures plus. You do know that, don't you? Oh, yes, yes. And that's what we're coming back to when we itemize and we look at what this project is going to cost. Well, the 7-year hump is vital because they may look wonderful here after 3 years, but statistics show that most companies go out of business within that 7-year period. Nearly 90% of new businesses will fail within that 7 years. A lot of them get through the early years, you know, it might be 30, 40%, but at 7 years, that's the cutoff point. Next, the company must have a valid state-issued contractor's license. And by the way, let me just write down the contractor's licensing board address here. You have that. Just go in and take a look. The other thing I'd like us to have, again, to get back to credibility here, and we're going to do this, is give you, it costs us, and there's a little bit of work to do, but it gives you an accreditation from the state board that shows that you are licensed, you personally are licensed to get in to the home, right? And that conviction you had for theft, murder, and mayhem isn't coming to haunt them. Just kidding. Yes?
On that 7 years, would it behoove you to explain to the customer as well that the product they're purchasing is intended to last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years? So I just know myself, if somebody was saying, you mean you're not going to give me a price match or a price guarantee because they haven't been in business for 7 years? Why? And why is it so long? And I mean, I understand explaining companies need to get over that hump in the initial phases. However, you're also investing in a product that's supposed to last you longer than those 7 years.
Well, very good. That's a big part of it. But also, here's what generally happens with companies at the beginning. And Terry will back me up on this, because if any of you have ever run a business at the very beginning, you're willing to do things that you couldn't do later on, meaning that I can't compete against Pacific Outdoor Living's credibility and ratings and everything else. What's the only way I can compete?
Cost.
Cost. So in order to compete with cost, what do I have to do? Cut back. And the more I cut back, it's a vicious cycle. It's where companies fail. Even when you look at public companies that start, you know, you read in the paper they went out of business because they ran out of cash. They just couldn't get over that hump. So you're right. Use it with materials, use it any way you're comfortable with, but that 7-year hump is important. We cannot compete, and I'd be right up front with a homeowner. Man, we can't compete with a guy that has just left us taken all of our data and all of our information and gotten himself a truck and gotten 2 guys from Home Depot, we can't compete with that. But do you really want to take that risk? You see? You have to feed into it. Remember, I'm not up here to tell you all of the little secrets here without you being in agreement to getting their agreement. Let me give you that again. It's one thing for me to make the statement, but if I'm not willing as a salesperson to say, you don't want to go that route, do you? Or would you agree with that? All selling is based on agreement. You must get their commitment and belief, or all you're doing is spouting things off, because at the back of that look is, he's full of shit, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to have this stoic look to me and just nod my head, because that's the way I deal with salespeople. Do you get the difference? You've got to get the agreement from them, but I don't know if that's important to you. Or would you agree with that? Or am I going in the right direction? Let me tell you why 7 years is so important. Now, if you disagree, please just let me know. In that setup stage, I've also made it clear, this is not me talking. This is you and me having a discussion. And please, your viewpoint, your opinions, and what's important to you is so important in this process. Do you promise that you'll say and talk to me? You're doing that in the setup. The other guys aren't. I can tell you that right now. Their training is abysmal. They're in here. All they do, talk features, benefits, and never address those issues. Yes?
Some question. So obviously a lot of the procedures, we're relating this directly to the homeowner now. There are situations that we run into in selling this particular product where we have third parties, contractors, homeowners association, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a different system for that we have?
You follow the same system other than addressing, because I live in a homeowners association.
Right.
I live in a gated community.
Right.
And I know what I can and can't do. So
What I mean by that is, like, for example, when you're actually going to close, I mean that the sale is to the homeowners association or to
oh, I see what you're saying.
to a third party. Like sometimes you'll have a contractor, or and sometimes I ran into this just recently. I had a client that they have actually have a property management company with a large state, and so all the traffic goes through them. And I tried to meet with the homeowner, and I tried to get her to set up a meeting, and I couldn't. It happened. So all that communication, handling the emotional reactions, all that kind of stuff, which obviously works very well one-on-one directly with the person who's going to purchase. You know, you can't do that with a third-party person.
You can't. But what you can do with them
Yeah.
is, and I agree with you, I mean, my viewpoint and philosophy has always been, because this whole thing about gatekeepers, for example, or assistants or the other partners, I have to sell someone on me,
Right.
and then give them the ammunition they need to sell the other guy.
Right.
And particularly what worked well for you, which has worked well for me with organizations like that, is that that group particularly will have to rely on what's written as opposed to. And the other thing you have to do, and this is just a thing with Homeowners Association, and I've been in home improvement for most of my sales life, is that the legalities are very real to them. So in other words, if it was found out that they went the wrong route, just to try to save a buck, they're going to get killed. And again, if anything will work for you even better, it's this kind of stuff, where you let them know, whatever you do, I know there's other people going to be making a decision in your case, Mrs. Johnson. Whatever you do, don't let them take the shortcut. You know, you being educated is vitally important, and that's one of the reasons why I want to leave you with this information, so you can educate them and make sure they have a $2 million policy as opposed to $1 million, for example. Really seeing workman's comp as opposed to superficiality.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah.
I hope that answered that.
Yeah, I was just curious because I was wondering, because obviously, again, you know, when you are dealing with a gatekeeper or a manager or something along those lines, you know, they're not making final decisions. Sometimes it's a group, whatever. I do try to do that. I mean, I try to sell them, and often that does help lead the sale. The person goes, okay, yeah, you guys are it. I got to just convince everybody else that.
And the problem is, we've left them to their own devices to do that in the past.
Right.
And now we're not.
Right.
Now, it's this, push the fear button that they have to their pen hours.
I guess my other question would then be, is there a kind of a different tactic you take? Because, for example, like I have my own personal tactics. Like I know sometimes with HOAs, when I've actually sold something to an HOA, I will have to try to insist on getting a meeting they'll meet and discuss, and I'll go, hey, what time's the meeting? I can be there because I can probably best handle any questions that may come up, et cetera, et cetera. So at least I get to be face to face with everybody who's gonna make the decision. And then when I've done that, my closing percentage is much higher versus like, well, here's some information, I hope you pick us, and, you know, try to close the individual, which does work sometimes too, but to me, that's a tactic that I take
It's a
with
good
those,
tactic.
with those groups. I'm wondering if you developed any
Same
particular
tactic,
tactics.
except what I rely on is the fear of loss that will get me in front of them, because, you know, my business career where I was doing presentations in front of groups was the CFO, for example, I always knew was very conservative. The CFO wanted particular data, and it was usually financial data that gave him information, and that data would be really geared towards him. You know, this is what I believe is the differentiator. Not the fluff, not the pretty, nice pictures and the nice accolades and all the success stories, no. It's the fear of loss. And particularly with a group like that, educating them in these 30 points. If they don't, they're going to have a legal liability down the road, and that's the last thing they want. And they're willing to pay more to avoid it. And then, just to finish off on this, because we're going to take a break here in a moment, is the guarantee applies to new contracts only. It's not applicable to prior contracts. And that's our competitive price guarantee. Now, that comes with the comment of, now look, I know you have lots of choices ahead of you. Honestly, and whatever choice you make, I'm willing to respect that. But at the end of the day, I hope that with this in mind, you'll at least give me the opportunity to come back in when you've looked at the other two companies. There's no doubt, nobody else that you're going to meet in this industry right now has an Angie's List Super Service Award. They just don't exist. Only 5% of the members in that organization ever achieve that. Now, I know that's important to you. At least give me the opportunity when all is said and done to come back in and look at what they've presented to you. If I can match it, great. If I can't, I'll shake your hand and you know, let you know you're making the right decision. Is that fair to you? Everybody says yes. Make sense? Okay, so you see where we're going with this? The other direction we're going in, you're going to see an online ebook that is 6 critical mistakes to avoid. Interesting, you know, maybe 10 pages, they can download it. And then what else is coming is Terry's new first ever ebook, A Tale of Two Homeowners, right? Which gives the pluses of all of our people. And that book ends at page 6. And the other guy who's still going at page 27, right? And that original $65,000 budget's now 110, and the divorce papers have been served. Right? I'm serious. That is the way it is, and that's coming later. So let's take a break, because we've got just another little thing to get into before we end up. Terry's coming in with a couple of things we're gonna introduce right now. Any questions? I do want to bring that up in a moment, actually, as a great point that we want to feed into. Are you on board with what this is? I mean, I don't want to do this because if it's not on your determinism, if it's on your determinism, wonderful. I'm just telling you, the statistics are phenomenal. Numbers for those salespeople. I mean, let's be honest. Would you want me competing with you in the field? Probably not. And I'm not up here, you know, that's not my point. My point is that what you're doing, remember, get back to this. It's just human nature. You know, to become really good at what we do, we have to be really experts at human nature and understanding that the social mechanisms that people surround themselves in you are going to be thrust right at you at the beginning. You know, and that is just part of nature. They will thrust that social mechanism at you over and over and over again. And your job, obviously, is to acknowledge it and so forth. And then as you move forward, you finally open the door to the real personality, where they feel comfortable in communicating to you. And that's the magic, you know. That's where you see sale after sale after sale occur, is that understanding, the trust level goes higher, and they're willing to say things to you. It's what they say that's important. It's your ability to get them to communicate. So now we were talking about how we use the fear of loss to help us, right? So go ahead, so tell us this story. You can stand up, but just explain what has occurred now in the city of Pasadena, which is probably going to occur as more and more cities look for revenue.
The city of Pasadena now, when you close escrow, they send the zoning inspector out and the building department, and they check everything. And if there's anything that hasn't been permitted or was done illegally, it has to be corrected before you can close escrow. And I had a client that I did a design for, and the contractor built a lot of stuff without permits. We spent 3 months and probably $25,000 correcting all these little things that they wouldn't okay. And luckily, the new client was willing to wait 90 days because a lot of people might back out of the escrow. So if Pasadena's doing it now, I suspect that sooner or later other cities will be following suit. So it's getting really critical to make sure that people pull permits now.
So
No.
who pays for it? Sorry.
The homeowner,
The homeowner.
Not the
the
buyer.
seller.
No, the homeowner.
The seller.
The
Yeah.
seller.
The selling homeowner.
Seller.
Yeah, and then I had to deal with the real estate company, I had to deal with the city, I had to do new plans, I had to do all this stuff, to try to get that through. And then the funny thing is, the zoning inspector, one guy who did the house said, I never would have flagged you for that. The guy who did, he made a big deal out of everything, and then I finally called him, I said, everything's ready, and you guys have probably experienced this too. He said, you better be there right at 12 o'clock, because I'm on a tight schedule. So 2 hours later, after I was waiting there for him, he shows up and says, I'm in a rush, I got too much going on today, did you do everything? I said, yeah, he signed off on it and left. Never even checked. And we had to lower walls like 3 inches. Stupid stuff like that. But this is how critical it's getting.
Now, if you brought that up as a communication, what else would you need to make that point even more valuable? All you have to do is open up your book, and there is the city of Pasadena's zoning regulation now, in writing. If it's not written, it's not true. It's one thing for you to communicate it, it's another thing to actually show it. You go, now look, here it is in writing. Is it in your city right now? It may be, it may not be. I guarantee you if it's not, it's going to be within the next year or two. My whole point is that with Pacific Outdoor Living, we're adamant about it. We're adamant about it. Mrs. Jones, we never want to come back to your home. Don't take that the wrong way. We want to do it right the first way, do it perfectly the first way, and never have to come back, unlike the other guys. But I don't know how important that is to you. Do you get the last comment? If you don't enforce it with a, I don't know if that's important to you, you don't actually get their commitment, right? Because later on, when I'm getting into the close, I can always go back to that and say, but correct me if I'm wrong, but earlier you said that was really important to you. Remember, all selling is based on agreement. Get the agreement, get the agreement, get the agreement, have it in writing, show it, and say, why am I bringing this up? I don't need to bring it up from our perspective because we always pulled the right permit. But let me show you something that's important, and I was going to show you this later, but I thought what I'd do is just bring it out to you right now. During this process, I believe, and our company believes, that it's vitally important that you're educated. And right here it communicates about, and we call it an SSA, a security shield. What's the last word again? Authority icon. It's an SSA icon because what happens is the company, in an effort to reduce the price to you, now see how I'm preempting this in the middle stage of the presentation, the company, in an effort to give a lower price to you, what do you think they need to do? Well, in order to give you what seems like a wonderful price, they must cut back somewhere. And this is what 80% of companies do in the home improvement industry. Where are they going to cut back? Well, believe me, you're not going to get the right guy. Because instead of paying him $30 an hour, they're paying him $14 an hour. You're not going to get the permit because they're going to suggest you don't need one. And that's where they save money. But I don't know how important that is to you. Because later on, I'm making the case for my money. Do you get it? Your presentation is skilled. Your presentation is geared around throwing that in at the right part so that you can make the point for a $24,000 bid from Pacific Outdoor Living, which is still fair as opposed to the $18,500 bid that we're faced with. Make sense? Good. So that, we need to find that document from the city of Pasadena, have it in writing, and it's part of your portfolio as you bring it out. Yes?
So I get this question a lot about the permits. And one thing that no one in the entire industry seems to permit is irrigation. And for whatever reason, that seems to be the one that people bring up is, you know, do we need to permit irrigation? And, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see that we're actually gonna start permitting irrigation.
Do we have to
It's
permit?
point connection is on.
Right.
Glendale requires a permit.
Yes, well, there's different municipalities, and I believe, you know, depending on the price, there's some, you know, as far as irrigation goes. But, good point.
So
Well-
maybe it's just a tech thing where we need to be better educated on how we're
Absolutely.
gonna handle that question.
Absolutely. If the permit has to be pulled, we'll pull the permit. There's no ifs or buts to that, on that whole subject. Only if we have to. If we don't have to, obviously, we don't need to.
And understand, there are some areas that we've, over the years, bent to the standards of the competitor, right? So, and also, I mean, paving stone driveways were designed not by ICPI standards, but the guy that was here first and owned the neighborhood. So do you guys understand that?
No.
Okay. Basically, Systems Pavers, who were here first, you know, and did it and started selling it, their standard is 4 inches of base, period. No soils test, no compaction of soil, no testing, that's what the standard is. And other people, including Pacific Paving Stone, kind of bent to that because in order to compete with them, we couldn't put in 6 inches, right? We
Makes
couldn't
sense.
compact the base and do that, so we went, okay, well, we'll do, you know, what Systems, knowing that it's insufficient. But we're gonna change that, and we're gonna use that as then a selling technique to annihilate the competition. We're just gonna give the facts. These are the facts. The facts is that, you know, 4 inches of base is not satisfactory for every driveway in the United States or in Southern California. That there is a tech, you know, and actually the problem is, you know, there is no building code regulations for paving stone driveways. There isn't. They have no clue on what to do. So it's totally up to the guy, you know, with his, you know, wheelbarrow and shovel of how much he puts in. But ICPI has actually came up and these are the standards that they have. So those are some of the things that we're going to do. Is that, you know, and we just need to do that, okay? If we're going to spend the extra money to have an inspector come out and check the sprinklers, I mean, we do everything for code. We do things standardly, you know. Let's do that. Let's take that extra $500 or whatever, and hey, you know, we could say that. No, hey, I believe, like for sure, I don't know any paving stone companies that compact the subsoil. They just don't. You know, but we have to start doing that. So we're the first, and we set that standard. If nobody else is doing irrigation, fantastic. What a break for us. Because then, you know, we can say, hey, you know, you need a permit for doing this, and you know, make sure that they get a permit. Ask them if they're going to get a permit.
Does that mean the demo crews are gonna carry a selective path?
Absolutely. We have to, you know. And then if for whatever reason, and we have to be able to go, you know, I think we should take the stance if, well, our competitor, you know, our price is $12,500. We'll put it in 6 inches of base, and we're compacting the sub base. So the competitor's price is $10,000. He's putting in 4 inches of base and not compacting the sub base. There's no regulation. There's no permit that we're, you know, we can say, okay, we'll do that, but there's no warranty. I can't give you a lifetime warranty. I know your driveway's going to fail in 3 years, but you know, we can match the price. So you guys want to have a conference if you want to do that or not.
Or the question is, I don't know how important that is to you.
Yeah, I don't know how important that is to you.
You get it? I mean, I have to get you to say something. I don't know how important that is to you. Well, it's important to me. You know? And then you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to make them do it. well, good luck. You know?
Yes.
I was just gonna ask on that note, I mean, I think that does have a major impact on that, because there are some things that I run into where the codes can be like a problem. They can actually be a stop to the sale, because like, an example is like someone wants to put a sink into a barbecue. And that's technically supposed to be tied into the sewer line. It's supposed to have a line on it. So you're not talking like $1,000 difference. You're talking like $5,000, $10,000 difference sometimes, you know? And sometimes it's kind of a double-edged sword, because it can almost be like what they really want, and they like really want that sink.
Got it. Now, if I could just answer that,
Yeah.
because in one of the last companies that I ran and worked with for a while at Garage Envy, people would bring this up all the time. Well, I want to put, particularly Indian families, where they'd want to put a burner in the garage, right? So they want to put a burner in the garage. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You know, there's no venting, there's no nothing. It's totally against code. And there are times when you're faced with these ethical dilemmas. Now, I refused to okay that. That was just ridiculous, that liability. I found out later that the installer had come back in his own time and done it. Can you believe that?
Is the house still standing?
Well, he's not working for us anymore. I mean, that was just, you know. There are times when it's up to you to communicate to the client, look, the best we can do is leave the opening for you. Leave the opening. I'll prep it any way I can, but we can't do that. And let me just explain why, you know, our license, this, but what you do in your own time when we walk out of here, let me just set it up for you, and that was that was my solution. Leave it empty, don't run the line. If we have to drill the hole, that's it, but we're out of there. Let them do whatever they want. And that's my best suggestion for you, is just prep it so they can do it, we walk away. Otherwise our license is in jeopardy. And here's the irony of it all. They will, if you communicate it. In that way, they'll go, the trust factor just goes through the roof. They trust you even more. Because you're not willing to compromise your own integrity.
So then basically what we should do, and we can think of solutions, you know, I mean, for a sink, we can cut the hole, we can leave it there, we can put a cutting board in that space. And then later, after we're gone, if you want to take it out, you know, and put a sink in and just let the water go into the backyard or whatever, you know, like that.
Your prerogative.
But, you know, basically while we're here, you know, we can put a cutting board in. That's your option.
And Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to be very honest with you. If you were to sit in front of any other company and they told you anything other than that, do yourself a favor and walk away. Please do.
And I believe, like, as far as the irrigation goes, right? I mean, most of these jobs that we're doing that, we're getting some sort of building code inspection at any rate, right? I mean,
Some of them are just
Usually
like
landscaping,
irrigation.
no. There's a few cities like Santa Monica, Pasadena that they started requiring that, but I think if you get it permitted, you have to run all the lines 12 inches deep. You know, and normally we don't do that.
no, well, pretty much, I know we're out there with, over at you, and I guess I'm not totally clear on that, because I don't think we have any inspection requirement, even though the inspector's there, we're putting in irrigation. But we'll clarify what that is.
Yeah,
The
I think
inspector's
that's
there.
exactly the thing, like, even the inspectors don't expect us to, you know, actually permit the irrigation. They're kind of like, oh, well,
Right.
you know, that's, like, who would do
Yeah,
that?
so we'll look in it, we'll come up what the solution
Okay.
is in each case.
But the answer to that would be, if that question comes up, you go, you know, you're bringing up a great question. The inspectors don't even need to do it, but we're going to create it to those standards. So then in the event that ever did occur, you will be totally safe. That is important to you, isn't it? Yes, it is. That's all.
Okay, I just kind of want to understand how to relate that to what the checklist is saying about the permits and things.
Yeah, well,
So-
we just, I mean, there's a few things that over the years that we bent to the competitor instead of standing up and saying, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, 'cause
I don't know
sometimes-
how important that is to you.
Well, that's the thing, is sometimes that question that can't be answered the other way, because like, for example, with pools, a lot of pools, existing pools don't have pool fencing, required standard for that. And then when I talk to them, I go, I don't want fencing, I do not have, I don't want fencing, I don't care about like for example, now, I was told by Harley like 3 months ago that Los Angeles requires a permit now just to replaster the pool.
Just to do what?
Just to replaster the pool, even if you're not doing a structural change. Yeah, I didn't know that either. That came up when I was looking at this job a while ago. I think TR mentioned that to me. So that means I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he's told me. And if that's the case, and every pool in Los Angeles requires a permit, that means all that stuff's gonna come up to code. All their pool fencing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Plus design wise.
But, we put in fencing, right? We have to, the homeowner doesn't have a choice, because we don't do a pool
Split the
without a
drains.
permit.
Right, yeah.
We don't do a pool without a permit, and we handle the fencing, whatever, the issue is.
Or get one of those alarms.
However, whatever is, acceptable by code, we have to do. So there's gonna be a lot of issues we're gonna have to look at,
Okay.
but the idea is, that's the stance that we're gonna take.
Yeah, I sold a house in Silver Lake years and years ago, and the garage, we put a little powder room that infringed in the garage. I don't know how it happened. We sold the house, did not let the homeowner know that this had occurred. Essentially, we hadn't permitted it. And regardless of who was at fault, it wasn't deliberate, it was simply just this had slid because it was years prior that we did it. I ended up paying, at the end of this whole process, $60,000 to settle it with them. This is true, $60,000, and my lawyer cost me $50. And because the homeowner that bought it was a lawyer. And it was a lesson learned, and the simplicity of, all I had to do was just divulge it and sell the house. And you look back at those silly, stupid mistakes, but unfortunately, in any circumstance that avoids any infringement on legal matters, they're going to go after the company. And that the unwanted consequences later are because we didn't compromise. Here's the irony of it all, even if you got the homeowner to sign a document stating that they understand that me putting that in is against the law, would come back to haunt me even more.
Oh, I know, you're acknowledging. that.
You're acknowledging the fact that you just did something, that doesn't even help. you see.
Right. And actually, there's 4 points of a legal contract to be binding, and you can't contract to do something illegal. And if you have in the contract, you're gonna do something to not get the permit, then the contract itself is not valid. The homeowner doesn't even have to pay us. So that's just something, just in teaching the ICPI class, those are, one of the 4 points is there's mutual consent, consideration, legal capacity, and you can't contract to do something illegal.
Yeah.
So you have a written contract and you say homeowners required, if there's any problems to handle the city, because we're not getting a permit.
But what if you actually said they are the owner builder? Because that actually is a legal thing, owner builder. They are subcontracting us to do a specific scope of work.
Well,
They're responsible for permits.
yeah, that may be all permits, gotten by owner,
But that's how we actually have.
If you say all
Yeah.
permits are, gotten by owner, and we'll fall into the inspection, you can do that. But if you say, we're not permitting this, I think we've written some pretty stupid things in the contract. But the point is, and then everybody in the room was arguing with me, and I said, it's not me, just what it says, that's what makes a legal contract.
Call the bar.
If you contract to do something illegal, even if maybe you don't have to state, you're contracting to put in something in the easement that shouldn't go in the easement, and, it's not legal. I think that it could come back on us. So that's the point.
But you never put that stuff in writing that you know that you're doing something illegal. You're just gonna say like, okay, I'll say this, but I'm gonna do that.
Right, but I think even what Harley said as far as the sink goes, you contract to put in the sink, right? And you do so, and, that wasn't legal. So according to how that was written up, it's a legal contract. They could say the whole contract's illegal.
And that's the thing, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
But even verbally, what you say a lot of times, the lawyer puts you in the stand. Did you apply to the homeowner that? It still opens the company up for liability. Generally, what happens is, if a big outdoor living comes and settles,
Yeah,
And
that's
we
what
write a
will
check
happen.
for
Yeah.
$75,000 out of what profits we've made, and they go away, but that's just the name of the game, so we need to be careful in that. Anyway, I know we're limited in time here, but at this point, what we're getting into now is this whole concept, right, of making the case, right? That's what we do. We're making the case for our product, and at the same time, doing what? Building trust, but at the same time, destroying the competition. Destroying the competition, putting such seeds of doubt in their mind that it's highly unlikely they're going to go in that direction. And then part of this is what we want to introduce is just some ways that we can do that. Remember, and this also gets back to people generally buy what they can touch and feel. What you do upstairs, just you, there's an art to it because it's all verbal over the telephone. But just to give you an example, once those forms are done, you will also have a PDF. And what I'd like you to do, by the end of today, we should have these forms done, and in PDF version, go back to your people in your pipeline that are still sitting out there that aren't closed yet, and just, dear Mrs. Smith, just checking in with you, hope everything's going well. By the way, I don't think I dropped this off with you the last time I saw you at the house, but take a look at it, and there it is, and it's the PDF of the 30-point checklist. This may help you in your decision-making process. Any questions, please feel free to ask me. And you send the PDF out. You get it? So we can start going after the people that are in the pipeline that have not yet moved forward, or our friend who is still going through the 3-month, 4-month process, right? House, blah, 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 maybe this, maybe we won't. Start to educate them. A few days later go by. Oh, by the way, this came across my desk. And it's the 6 critical mistakes. And then attached with the 6 critical mistakes is what? A success story. Always positive, negative, positive, negative. Try not to go too negative. Get it? Try to equate it with something else so that you're hitting both sides of the equation here.
Okay.
And that will help. Good.
So on making your case, I want to go over that a little bit. So how many guys here have listened to the Y2 Capes, Ricks? So you have, who else? You've never listened to those tapes? Okay. You have?
Part
No,
of them.
part of them? Okay. So Nancy? No?
I think I did, but I didn't take the test. Is that what we're finding out?
No. No. Okay. So these are brilliant stuff. So we have them. They're available. They're easy. You can just pop them in. The DVDs, you just put them in while you're driving around. But the point that he makes here on making your case, he says, so here's the DSR or SR, and you're the attorney, right? And the jury, basically, is the customer, is the dirt. And who's on trial is Systems, Pacific Paving Stone, and Go Paver, right? Or whomever, right? We're on trial. And you guys are making the case, right?
I love it.
You're making the case to the jury, right, which is the customer, and they're going to pick one of these guys. So who's responsible? And now imagine you're the attorney, right? And basically you're defending, one of these guys. And you go home at night, you got to make the case, right? So what do? You prepare by getting what?
Evidence.
Get some evidence and go, oh my God, that's what I'm going to do, okay? And don't leave it all to us to make the case, because like Craig and Brian, you guys have done it so many times, and some of the things that I want you guys to do is look these over, and Anthony and I came up with these, so I want you to look at them and go, what about this, and on the 6 critical mistakes and the 7 critical errors. So you guys can add to that or change it or whatever. But you get the concept of this. So I think you know where those are, the Y2 marketing tapes. They're on the computer. We have copies of them. It's great listening. And the guy's brilliant on the concept. And when he gets into this, he just says, how are you going to make the case? So that's what we're talking about. That's all this marketing collateral that we're gonna do. And the other part of it is then when we have what we're gonna do with the driveway, and I brought this up a couple of years ago, but now, you know, with Peter's strengthening it, where we're gonna test the soil, okay? So, you know, did you have that in my tester that I had, remember? I don't know what, anyhow.
You gave me the hammer and we never came up with a test.
No, I had it, yeah, it's just a piece of pipe,
I
with
know.
with a slit on it, and you just pound it into the ground. You know, if you're not at the driveway, you do it next to the driveway. Yes,
There's a tool that's just like that, but it has a spring on it and like a little pokey thing, and you press it into the ground and it'll give you how, you know, loose the soil is based on how much that spring is.
right, that's a different tool. I want to take a soil sample.
Oh, right, oh, the
Wanna
form
take
thing,
it,
gotcha.
okay? So anyhow, no problem, next week we'll have that there. So you take the soil sample, and we're gonna design with your guys' help, right? Because you're really the attorneys here, right? I don't wanna tell you, oh, this is how you should get these guys out of jail. I want you to use your, you know, feedback and create that. I mean, this is your profession. Then once you have it, you know, and I know both of you have over the years developed stuff, and Brian has, this is what I say. But let's get some more ammo, okay? So part of the ammo is you take the test, right? You go out and you take it, and you have your soil test, and you're gonna come in and you're gonna have a, you know, a jar of clay, and you're gonna have a jar of, you know, a sandy soil. And you're gonna, then you can wet it down or whatever, but I'll get you to actually test that and feel it between your fingers and tell me what it feels like. And then test this one, tell me what it feels like. And then I'm gonna have the sample from your samples, right? That I took, and now this is your sample. So here, test that. I know it's kind of messy, but, you know, and then tell me what that feels like. Did it feel more like the clay one or the sandy one? It'll be between, okay, good. So, but basically, you know that it's critically important that the soil gets analyzed. And that's one of the 7 critical errors that we show here, that we're gonna analyze your soil. You know, and I'm sure I can leave this with you. You can just put it with the other guys' soil samples that left and put them together. And they go, well, obviously, that's going to totally set us apart right there. I mean, 5 minutes. And then I'm going to have a chart that you're going to show them and we can design this ourselves from ICPI specs with the amount of traffic that goes into the driveway, the type of clay or soil it is, how much base we need. Easy, you know. And right away, you know, we're going to show them ICPI specs are 6 inches for driveways. You know, for us, huh?
Higher than that.
No, it's 6 inches. 6 inches for a residential driveway. That's the minimum requirement. So that's a residential driveway you drive in and park on. Now you have a driveway that's, you know, shared by neighbors, and you have garbage trucks going in and out of them. You know, that changes it altogether. And it's clay soil. Whatever. So, but we can, and really, we're in the position that we have truck. I mean, for us to do 2 more inches is not a big deal.
I'm going to ask that question because actually in our written guarantees it says we will meet ICPI minimum standards, which is 6.
Yeah.
We used to, I don't think it's in our guarantee anymore. We used to have that where we were, even though we never did it.
But what we're going to do is we're going to go, if the driveway's designed this for the $12,500, we'll give you a lifetime warranty. Say, hey, can you meet the price? You know, and then you say, this is what it is. But you understand, Brian, I can't give you for $10,000. I can do his specs, but there's no warranty. You know, or it's, you know, a year's warranty, because you know, your driveway's going to fail in 3 or 4 years, just like all these other pictures of driveways that have failed. But I don't know. Is that important to you?
And the other thing
Whether my
too.
driveway failed or not?
Well, to roll the dice. I will warranty it only if we do 6 inches of base, you know, with the concrete, and we're gonna put steel in, you know, all the bond beams, that's what we're gonna call them, you know, the bond beams that go around the driveway. Why not do that extra quality of installation, do the test, do the extra quality, and, you know, get 20% more sales?
You're the homeowner. Now, what I'm doing during this process is I really want to educate you on the correct way to do this. Just out of curiosity, have you had other bids? I know you said earlier you're planning to, so can I assume I'm the first?
Yes.
Okay, great. So here's what I suggest you do. Don't have the other guy, don't mention a word to him about the stuff that I'm going to tell you. Because what I'm giving you are the standards, 6 inches. Just see if he brings it up. Okay? Can you do that for me? In other words, you don't want the customer going, oh, the other guy said 6 inches, why are you, because I'm just going to make it clear, these are the standards. I even put it in writing for you, because it's probably written somewhere where that's the standard. Remember, if it's not written, it's not true. But this will give you the opportunity to really see where they're coming from. Let's see if they bring up permits. Let's see if they actually communicate it or say. So in other words, you're prepping them for the next 2 bids, as opposed to, here's the standards, tell everybody. No, 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 don't say a word. Later on, you can make the decision after you see the 3rd person.
Okay? And I guarantee you, I mean, you're gonna, and who's gonna do it is the guy who, it doesn't matter, because he's selling the house in 6 months. You know? So, last 3 years, I don't care. You know, or the guy that's willing, he's the gambler. He's willing to roll the dice. Hey, my neighbor's, you know, Jose did my neighbor's driveway 2 years ago, so it's okay. Or they go up to it and go, it's no big deal, you know? And we will get people like that. They don't, I mean, that doesn't matter. Well, that's fine, that's not our customer. But you could, I mean, if somebody answered in the affirmative, right? If you said, I assume that's important to you, and you said, no, price, period, done, that's it. Then what would we do? What would you do?
If you said price?
Yeah, hey, I can't, you know, the 2,500 or the 4,000 difference that you have, I'm gonna take my chances and go, I just can't, I don't care about the warranty all that much, you know. I mean, I went and saw some of his work and it looks okay to me.
Well, I mean, in that case, I'd try to go back on the shooter and let you know. I would try to, because he's gonna have some, I mean, he's a person, you know, some fear that, like, have you ever done anything before? Like I said, I totally understand, you wanna make sure the price is correct, totally understand. You know, I want a very competitive price for all the work I did on my home. My question for you is, have you ever had any issues in the past with contractors where you might have hired somebody who might have been the cheapest and didn't work out?
Yeah, but I kind of suffered through.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
And you know, and eventually, I sometimes I'm telling you, Brian, I know it's hard, but I did make it through it. But you know, I still had $5,000 in my pocket at the end.
Sure, and I totally understand. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad that you're able to put up with that stuff, and it can be extremely difficult depending upon the situation. So like I had one client, they sold another job to in Glendale. My competition sold a job across the street. After the job was completed, all the pavers discolored and it's still sitting there. Her driveway looks bad, and it's been that way for probably about a year and a half now. She hates it. So I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure to your driveway, but then the question is again, you know, how much gambling you're willing to do to take the risk. I mean, would you be willing to live with that type of situation?
Yeah. Okay. Well, agreed. Right.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm also saying at some point you go in the qualifying or whatever. You know, this is the guy's. He doesn't care about quality.
Right.
He's going to sell the house. So I'll give him the price.
Oh yeah,
whatever.
if he's selling the house, he goes, yeah, I don't care.
Wouldn't that be the case? Right. I mean, at some point you're going to go, okay, I'm going to put my attention and time. I'm going to go home and work tonight on preparing my case for tomorrow instead of just trying to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend upon the situation. Like, you just gave me some background. The other guy's gonna go sell the house, and okay, fine. So
Right.
I may not make
Yeah.
that.
This is what it is.
But then again, I'd have to know, like, if he's originating, well, I just want the cheapest price. Is that I just have to, I'd have to really understand the background data as to where that guy is really just an injection kind of thing, sort of gym injection,
Or a scary cat.
or a scary cat or something like that, or am I just really being a guy who absolutely does not care?
Right.
How good the quality?
Good. So anyhow, but anyhow, I guess the point that I'm gonna make, and then the other thing that we're gonna add is as far as, you know, when you go through and you have drains, you can have your kit and you can have a drain. So typically when somebody puts drains in, you know, they can write on the contract, you know, 3-inch triple wall drain. And most homeowners don't really know that's a 3-inch triple wall drain. I'm gonna actually show you why. It's a triple wall
Yeah,
drain.
because I make the decisions around here.
Okay.
It's the money.
And then this is, yeah, okay, and this is a 4-inch,
That's all good
and this
households
is,
are run.
that's right, I think that's excellent that you do. You know, actually, you know, Brian, you can take a break.
You get some water, honey.
Yeah, get some water.
And I have my wife's
Okay.
okay.
So I can see that it would be important to you that these fittings, the brass fittings, a 4-inch pipe, and all these fittings are glued. Do you know that standard industry standards is to put these in without gluing? Did you know that? Yeah.
No, I did not.
So if we have
That's how
to
the
replace
roots get in
any of
then?
the parts.
Huh?
Is that how the roots get in?
Yeah.
And it separates and then the
And
roots?
typically, this is so weak that it gets deformed that if they do put glue in, it doesn't hold. But, you know,
And why do they do that?
Save money.
To save money. Remember, you're always making the case to come back later on that issue.
Good thing we don't do that.
Not anymore.
yeah.
Not anymore.
Today, we're doing it without glue, right? Tomorrow, we're gonna use this. And don't even give them the option, you know, do you want the plastic top or do you want, you know? So this cost me 17 bucks, and this costs $1.99. Okay, so there's,
Look at that savings.
what?
Look at that savings. though.
That's right.
It's gonna cost
Okay,
us
That's
$20,000.
100 bucks on the
Now,
whole
hold on a
house.
second, right? So it's a typical driveway, $10,000, right? So to get him 5 brass drains is gonna cost me 50 bucks more, or 85 bucks,
It's so
whatever.
worth it
Yeah, never done.
Big deal.
in the long run.
You don't even do
Well,
that.
and what's-
And then you can say, and we should have, or wherever on our, if you're seeing, just, you know, you gotta make sure when the competitor comes in or somebody comes in, you know, ask them what kind of drain. Triple wall sounds pretty good. This is triple wall.
Plus the plastic. Yeah, that SDR thing is not inspiring.
No, that is SPR.
And that's triple wall?
Yeah, so
Triple
we
wall is the cheap
might
stuff.
have to come up with a term.
Triple wall is the cheap stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
triple wall is.
What is SDR?
I don't know.
I think it's the chemical name.
Yeah, it's
The
the
chemical
standard for, you know, the quality pipe. So just like we made, you know, the SSA, the security, we made those up. Or Lisa and Peter.
So let's call it 4 times SDR.
Look, and it's made in the United States.
Yeah, I cut that
Yeah,
off.
that's a good one.
Left that right there. Set that. in place. And then this one, I want to get a piece that says made in China.
There you go.
Or North Korea. Made in North Korea. By Kim. Mr. Kim. Okay.
My 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Sweatshop.
This is a bigger drain, right?
Yeah. this is-
Yeah,
4
that's
inch.
4 inch.
And that's,
That's right, 4 inch,
3 inch.
that's 3 inch. So,
And the advantage
that
being-
does, well, you get rid of the water. I mean, you're not gonna have standing water in your backyard that, you know, when you have a huge rain, I saw from the stains in the back that, you know, that you've had sitting water here. Has that ever come into the house? I know you haven't noticed it, maybe.
But I noticed it.
That's
I'm
right.
at home all day. I mean,
Right.
That's been on his honey-do list for so long.
Okay, but listen, so there's what, we want to finalize this next week, but I want your guys' help, okay? I'd like you guys to go, okay, I'm preparing the case for the landscape design, all the things that you can think of, and where we can add to these. So we'll print these off so you can all have a copy. And then hopefully by tomorrow, if there's some changes, that'll give us enough time, right?
We'll be done, yeah.
If there's some things that you can put on there, either on the 30 questions or the 7 critical mistakes of, some ideas of, hey, that's not so critical. I got a really good one, because there's probably something that somebody's going to think of that's going to be better than that. Okay, and then the other thing is really look at how you're going to put your presentation together and work on doing that.
Right. And I think back to that is a perfect example of how you can physically show how the other guy's cutting costs, right, at your expense.
Evidence.
That's the evidence, exactly right. If they touch it, they feel it. And when Terry talks about this is important. You being creative in those little, the brass versus PVC, all the little things that they can touch and feel. Again, making the case for that's how the other guys cut back on costs.
So we
at
could
your
do
expense.
too, is get a clear rectangular tube and put the 6 inches of base and the sand paver in it. And you sit it on the test, one shorter than the other. Go, look, there's our driveway, there's their driveway.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Good idea.
Yeah, that's
Plus,
fantastic.
I should probably, when we say base, why not? I could have here some base, a little jar of some base.
Right.
You should have your toolkit that you opened up with all the stuff that you're going to show them.
Right.
And even stuff that, you might not necessarily bring up, but if they ask questions, hell, let me show you what, if somebody says, if anybody asks you, hey, have they ever put you a Texel dial? Right? I'm sure people have asked that. Well, you go, well, actually, let me show you, and you take out a piece of the filter cloth, the fabric cloth, and show them what it is. And you have all that stuff, and you go, wow, this guy is certain, right, and confident.
I think what would be a great additive too is we should look for it is what I had in the last company were these nice little bags that you can bring in with the logo on the outside. You zip it open and there's all of those, all that collateral is there. And that's how you make your case and prove your case. And of course at the very end you always say to them, were they wearing a black shirt or a white shirt? Because the good guys wear white shirts, right? Good. So this is you being creative, okay? These are just great ideas, but I think if you just make that case, everything else falls into place. Just make sure that you keep throwing in how the other guys cut costs. This is that 12,000 versus 10,000. It's not an illusion. There had to be somewhere in this equation that they saved $2,000. Inevitable. Somewhere they're willing to do it. And don't believe this thing about volume. That's bull. Oh yeah, the other guy's going, well, we just do more. That's how we're able to cut our costs. No, you don't. They're cutting back on labor. They're cutting back on skilled labor, I should say. They're cutting back on administrative functions that they should be following on. They're cutting back on material costs. All of those things. Build the case, build the case, build the case, build the case. Believe me, when it comes to 12,000 versus 10,000, there's no illusion anymore for them. And the close becomes that much easier. Okay? Any other questions? So what you're going to see now, over this period of time, we're going to create the collateral. We're going to be putting together the tools you need. You're going to be getting these as PDFs. Please think in terms of your pipeline. Who's sitting out there that you can go after? Oh, by the way, I forgot to drop this off with you. And send it out. Positive. Always send out the criticals with the success story. A new success story that comes through, get a PDF. Constantly send that out, send that out, send that out to all your current pipeline people. Sound good? By the time you see me next week, these will have been printed. We will be in action. Got it?
So I need your input by Friday, by tomorrow, on all these. So we don't have to do color, we'll just.
Don't do color, we'll just print it out.
Would you guys prefer that we print them off, or that I email you guys the PDF and you can email me back the information?
I would rather print them off,
Okay.
and that way you have a hard copy in front of you.
And we can always mark that up and take
Mark it
photos.
up, bring it back, but we need it fast. You need
Yeah,
it fast.
yeah.
We need to have these done as quickly as possible. Don't worry, when we run out, we'll always add a new one to it. Sound good? Did you like this?
Yeah.
Good. All right, good. Thank you, guys.
Okay, great.